Dean Obadallah. He wants to be your Muslim friend.
Most Muslims, I know many, are great people.
Watch this.
People.
You're listening to the Dean Obadallah Show, where comedy meets politics and all things in between.
And welcome back to Dean Obadallah Show. We're live right here Wednesday, October 10th. Now live with me in studio, the one and only Juan Williams, Fox News analyst, historian, author of various books, including the great new must-read book, What the Hell Do We Have to Lose? What Do You Have to Lose? Trump's War on Civil Rights. Juan, thanks for being here, my friend.
Dean, thanks for having me. This is such a treat for me.
Is it?
Yeah, because I'm an XM listener.
Oh, that's good. And by the way, you should be doing commercials for blood pressure medicine. How are you so calm on the 5? I'd be and you look so calm. I would be screaming. I mean, I'm not like, I try to have a discussion, but there are times when you've got to look at them sometime. We don't have to call any names out, but I can. You look at them like, are you kidding me? Is this for real? Is this a game? Is this theater?
I think during Kavanaugh, my head wanted to blow off. So I think that what I'm doing is I must be taking the statins, to keep your blood pressure and prevent stroke, because a lot of it is inside. You know that commercial? Remember that famous commercial where they show you 2 sets of hands and one has a pencil and is breaking it, and they say which one's having the heart attack? It was actually the guy who's just going along like the pencil is all set, and that's me. I'm sitting there. I'm the one that's gonna like blow up one day, and you're gonna say, "Hey, listeners, did you hear what happened to Juan Williams over at Fox? That guy just blew up."
Well, welcome to Progress, where you're very welcome. Fox News, folks, is literally across the street. I mean, not like figuratively, literally. I can see it when I walk through the windows. And every day I come out at 9 o'clock Eastern time and I stare up, and there's the newsroom where Hannity is doing his thing, or Tucker. So let me ask you this. It's chicken and egg. Does Trump program Fox News, or does Fox News program Donald Trump? Because there is something, this relationship, again, tweeting today. Do you think he's not in production meetings at Fox News, right?
Might as well be, I think. I mean, but remember, yesterday in his rally, he's calling out specific Fox personalities and thanking our guys. You make you wonder. I mean, obviously, I'm there, so they have some value for some dissident, or to use Trumpian language, alternative set of facts.
Right.
But no, I mean, there's just no getting away from the fact that our former boss, Bill Shine, is there as head of communications. There's no getting away from the idea that more and more Trump relies on Fox.
And Hope Hicks is going to Fox, so now the revolving door is no longer K Street with lobbyists. It's between Fox News and the White House. And Bill Shine goes from one place and Hope Hicks goes over. There'll be trades in the future, I'm sure. Maybe a trade. Sebastian Gorka is traded for 2 players to be named later, although Gorka, So I want to talk about your book. It's a great book. What the Hell Do You Have to Lose? Obviously from the famous line of Donald Trump, I believe it was in Michigan, where he said that. And clearly we all have a lot to lose. But let's talk about a few issues. One of the big talking points of the right, and I played clips earlier from last night, 2 nights ago, Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, today again, and Trump's speech last night in Iowa, that the left, we're the enemy. I mean, we're one step from calling us the enemy. And I'm watching Fox News gin up fear of progressive the same way I've watched them gin up fear of other minorities, which is finding one extreme example and trying to define the entire community. And I'm Muslim, so they've done it with me many times. Our community, brown people, immigrants. Now they're showing a handful of people yelling at Ted Cruz at a restaurant, or Kirsten Nielsen in Portland, some random people in Portland yelling at a car. I'm like, what does that have to do with any of us? Yet now that's us, and they want their base to be afraid of that.
Well, it's more than that. I mean, what they want to do is delegitimize opposition and critical thinking with regard to Trump. So that if you engage in any of this criticism, if you stand up and say, as so many women in America are saying, by the way, Donald Trump said this, that he said he found Professor Christine Ford credible.
Yep.
But then he went on and mocked her, and then he goes on and apologizes to Kavanaugh. He doesn't apologize to Professor Ford, even though he mocked her.
Right.
But this is what's going on in this country. And if you present a setup alternative, hey, wait a second, what is with this guy? People then are like, oh, you're part of the mob. Part of the mob? All I'm trying to do is exercise my right as an American to speak up when I see the government behaving in a way that's damaging to my interest, to my family's interest, to my community's interest, to my American interest. And I don't think there's any question. So when I wrote this book, it's an answer to Trump asking the question, what the hell do you have to lose? Because the way the press handled it was, oh, this is Donald Trump appealing to black folks, saying, hey, you live in neighborhoods worse than Afghanistan, more violence, no jobs, bad schools. Why do you vote for these Democrats and these liberals?
Right.
You should be voting for me, Donald Trump. So I said, you know what? Let's look at the record. Let's see what we have to lose. And what I did was I broke it down by the provisions of the 64 Civil Rights Act, things like employment, housing, voting rights, etc. But you know, Dean, for me, it's so obvious. You got to think, I'm 64. Trump is like 72. And I'm thinking to myself, biggest story in my life as a black American is the civil rights era, the development of a black middle class, and the development of black political voice expression. People like Colin Powell as Secretary of State, people like a Bob Johnson as a billionaire, Oprah Winfrey, people like, I could go on, Condi Rice. How about the President of the United States as a black guy named Barack Obama? Obviously, Trump didn't like that.
No.
But I'm saying these things happen, and yet he says, what the hell do you have to lose? Because you guys have nothing. It is so insulting, so condescending. The suggestion is that the 20% of black people, and this comes back to what you were talking about with this mob language, the 20% of black people represent all black people. And that if there's shooting in a Chicago black neighborhood, that represents the entire black community. But, the reality is that one of the great accomplishments of the civil rights era was the growth of the black middle class. More than half of all black Americans earn between $35,000 and $200,000. You don't hear that. You don't hear Donald Trump saying, what an incredible story. These people, in the face of rank discrimination, believed in the American dream, pursued it, and have achieved, even with ongoing discrimination. You never hear that story. Instead, I think he's saying to that white audience, not to black voters, but to the white audience in Michigan, you know what? There are people over there who might as well be barbarians. They've got all this violence. They'll mug you. They want to come into your neighborhoods. Maybe they want to take your job. Right. It's the Latinos and the blacks. They want to take your job. Maybe they want to come to your school. And I, Donald Trump, I'm no liberal snowflake. I'm going to stand in the breach like a hero and hold back the approaching hordes. I think this is ridiculous. This invites racism. And I mean, remember, he's the guy who said of Charlottesville, find people over there running over, killing people.
You wrote in your book, there was a line that really jumped out. It was early in the book. You said Trump wants to see black failure and misery.
He enjoys it.
Explain to us because that was a stunning line to me in your book.
Well, because I think for him, it justifies his view that black people are essentially dysfunctional, Dean. Dysfunctional. And so what it means for him is they're a burden on us, the good people. And by the good people, I think he means white, Protestant, conservative America. The people who are the 1%ers, right? He sees them as, and remember, he appeals to that audience by calling them the forgotten man and woman, right? And he says, I'm going to help you. But guess what? Even though lots of black people, lots of Latino people might feel alienated and forgotten in our political structure, he doesn't speak that. No, he speaks to the white person who feels this way. And part of it is saying the black people are in such bad shape and are such a threat to you that I, Donald Trump, am going to call this out. So he, I think, uses this in the way that he uses fear, in the way that he incites anger. This guy now wants to call someone else a mob. Jeez.
Well, we played the clips where he literally called for violence. I'm chatting with Juan Williams about his brand new book, What the Hell Do You Have to Lose? Trump's War on Civil Rights. And it really, with Donald Trump, I don't say this to be snarky. I say it's the truth that he's not my president because he doesn't want to be my president. Nope. I'm Muslim. I'm a child of an immigrant. I'm Palestinian heritage. I'm not the guy he wants to be president of. I've never seen this in a president who got into power. It's beyond divisive. It's dismissive. He doesn't even care about the rest of his nation. If you're not one of his sycophant supporters who will cheer lock her up at a rally, he has no time for you. You've covered politics, you've written about it. Have you ever seen a president who has just been laser focused on his base to the expense and actually dismissive of everyone else who's not a supporter?
Well, I mean, it's easy for us to say, because it's so true and so obvious, I think, to your listeners, to everybody, that he is not only dismissive, he's divisive.
Yes.
And so he is concentrating on pleasing a really small base. That's why his numbers never drop below about 32, 35%. And then when it goes up like maybe 42 or something like that.
Exactly.
But there's this hardcore there. And rather than the typical political theory, which is, you know what, Mr. President, we want to expand that base. We want to get towards 50, especially with these midterms coming. We can't have these low numbers because it's going to impact turnout and results. No, he doubles down on the idea, I am just going to speak to this base. And this goes back to his election in 2016. Remember, the Republican Party, after losing in 2012 for a second time to Barack Obama, engaged in what they called an autopsy. And the key finding was, let's do better in terms of outreach to minorities, to women, and the like. Trump comes in and says, no, let's do better among white conservative voters who feel that Romney and McCain weren't strong enough and weren't more belligerent, especially towards those minorities, those immigrants, people who are not Christian. And that's what he's done. He did it when he's coming down that elevator, when he talked about Latinos as thieves. He's done it in terms of trying to ban Muslims from entering the country. He's done it at Charlottesville. That's why David Duke and the far right,
Spencer and these guys,
yeah, they love him.
Oh, he's the best.
They love him. They say he's our guy. You are violating your own heritage if you don't support Trump.
Traitor to your heritage,
That's
David
what
Duke.
he's
Literally, can you believe this? In today's day, we're in 2018. You have a president of the United States who, after 2017, a white supremacist terrorist attack, saying they're very fine people on both sides. And then his way, the new I've got a black friend, so I can't be racist, say black unemployment's gone down to record numbers. Look what I've done. But what's the reality of this?
The reality is that President Obama took it down. I think it was from like 16 down to 7.
Yep.
And Trump has lowered it 1 point to 6, and he wants all the credit. Meanwhile, he's saying Maxine Waters has extraordinarily low intelligence, right? He's saying that Frederica Wilson, who called him out for disrespecting a dead black veteran, is a liar, a wacky liar. And then he says, of course, about LeBron James, he's so dumb he makes Don Lemon of CNN look smart. And he said that Don Lemon is dumb, the dumbest man on TV. So this is the kind of attitude, and I mentioned before the birther thing with Obama. It just goes on and on. One of the things that I get into in the book, by the way, is, his dad was arrested marching with the Klan here in New York City. And it wasn't about blacks, Dean. No, back then it was the Catholics.
Sure.
The Catholics are coming. Oh, my God, better bind up the dogs, the children, and the women. The Catholics are coming to New York.
My mom's side are Italian Catholic. When my immigrants came from Sicily, my grandparents came from Sicily, they were not viewed as white. Now Italians somehow have become white. I get it. Over generation, right? And Catholics are okay. But they had to deal with anti-Catholic garbage and hate.
Right.
My dad comes in the 50s, Palestinian and Muslim. So the other side of my family has to deal with
the garbage.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's remarkable how we move forward, take a step back. Getting back to Trump, and I wrote about it for the Daily Beast, when he called Maxine Waters low IQ and attacked the intelligence and called black people dumb. And I went back and I wrote about it saying this is right from white nationalist literature. The idea that white people, these white nationalists, white supremacists, are inherently smarter and black people are inherently less intelligent. Do you think he understands that's where it's coming from? Or do you think he just is instinct that it happens to match up with these people who really view that white people are superior?
Well, here's the thing. I don't care.
Okay.
I'll tell you why I don't care. I think it would be a rationalization either way, because the message that resonates in the broader American public mind, but especially in the mind of people who are white supremacists, the Klansmen, the alt-right, is Donald Trump is calling out the historical stereotype, blacks are dumb. And they're too dumb, even in terms of this question, what the hell do you have to lose? Title of my book, they can't even see their own self-interest, these dummies. And how dare they challenge the great Donald Trump? Remember, we talk about Omarosa because she just recently wrote a book highly critical of the president. But Omarosa, she was close to the president because she was saying everyone should bow down to Donald Trump. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And tomorrow, Kanye West is in there. Kanye West. Now, what is going on with this guy? I mean, he says, Obama wouldn't meet with me. He says Trump is willing to meet with me. And I'm Jesus or whatever, and I have the dragon spirit, and Trump has the dragon. And you think, where is the substance? Where are the black people or even Latino people who are thoughtful people, intellectuals, policymakers, politicians, who have access, who are close to Trump? Answer zero. No, you get
celebrities.
Celebrities.
That's what it's about. I mean, look, the fight with Kanye West and Taylor Swift, and now Taylor Swift says vote Democratic, and Trump's like, I like her 25% less. I wonder, maybe you can tell me, in the African American community, is there a hesitance to work with Trump now if you're a community leader? Because the first years Trump was president, he didn't have an iftar, which is during Ramadan, the dinner. His second year he did. And I wrote an article for Beast going, if he invited me, I'm not going. No. At this point, it's not going to do it. I'm not going to work together. And except for Van Jones, who worked on criminal justice reform, and I respect Van, so I know why he did that. If anybody in the Muslim community now were to go work with him, it would be seen as just to help yourself almost, unless you're doing it for an issue you really worked on and he's embracing. So in the African-American community, he gets Kanye West. Can he get any other leaders in the African? Will Reverend Barber go meet with him now?
Oh, hell no.
So that's what I'm saying. So I wonder, this is all he's got. So he's like, I'll get Kanye. And I wonder if his own machinations, Trump goes, and now I got a black friend. And I can tell people, I got Ben Carson and Kanye. I don't know.
One of my best friends is a black guy, that kind of thing. I mean, it's ridiculous. But the thing about Kanye West is Kanye West doesn't have any substance.
Right.
In which he says, this is what I hope to accomplish with President Trump. I mean, because what I get into in the book, like, let's take, what do we have to lose? How about criminal justice reform?
Right.
Oh, there were Republicans who were on board working with Eric Holder, who was then the Attorney General, trying to get a deal. Here comes President Trump, Jeff Sessions, it's gone, right? Here, let's talk about voter suppression with the midterms coming. Oh, guess who says, I don't like the fact that I lost by 3 million to Hillary Clinton. Must have been voter fraud, must have been those immigrants, must have been those blacks. So he gets a voter fraud commission. They can't find anything. They have to disband. But they do a wink and a nod in terms of allowing Republican majority state legislatures to close polling places, limit hours for voting, limit days for voting, increase voter ID requirements. You think, what is going on in America? We should be celebrating, encouraging voting, not suppressing voting.
Well, they do the exact opposite. I'm chatting with Juan Williams about his brand new book, What the Hell Do You Have to Lose?, which are the words of Donald Trump, if you might recall during the campaign. You have a chapter on voting. You have a chapter on everything that's key and important, showing that a move to simply equality. That's all it's about. Voting. Now you just have Brett Kavanaugh confirmed, a man who upheld a voter ID law that the Obama administration, DOJ, said this violates the Voting Rights Act.
Absolutely. And also think back to the guy who was before him, Neil Gorsuch. Same attitude. So when it comes to key issues on not only civil rights, but you stop and think about women's rights, immigration in particular, these guys are a rubber stamp for Donald Trump. And so it undermines what should be the trust across party lines in a major American institution, the judiciary.
Right.
If you use anything going up to the court now, you think, well, there are 5 Republicans, and they're just going to rubber stamp it for Trump.
That's not the way it should be. That's not the way it was decades ago. And unfortunately, where we are now, I had Congressman Ro Khanna on from California last night. We talked about what ideas he had, and it's sort of like have a supermajority to confirm, so you can only confirm people who are like center, slightly left or right. Expand the court now, people are talking about openly. So let me ask you something that's come up on our show. And African Americans, Trump says, what the hell do you have to lose? But I've had African Americans call up and say, we're going to vote Democrat this time, but sometimes it's hard to get people in our community to come out because we voted Democrat 90%, 95%, and we're not seeing change in our community the way we want. Now, I'm not asking you to speak for the entire African American community, but what do you say? What are the things that Democrats should be doing more of to say, look, we appreciate all the support you've given us for decades now?
Well, much of this is historically rooted, Dean. I would go back, the book, as I say, is the way that I've devised it chapter-wise is based on the passage of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. That's why I do housing, education, voting rights, even black voice. Remember, James Baldwin was then, was a player in American life. So when you ask this question, I think you have to stop and think, wait a minute, look at this. Since the 60s to today, early in the 21st century, wow, look at all those black mayors. We've had a black governor in Virginia. Oh my gosh, look at the growth, and we talked about this earlier, in terms of the black middle class. Tremendous growth is a result of the federal government offering employment to black people disproportionately. Military is a model of terms of racial integration in our society. But even in the private sector, because of the change of laws, more hiring, more opportunity for blacks, Latinos, people of different colors, immigrants in the private sector in America. And that's why I think you've seen this tremendous growth in the black middle class. Still a really large gap in terms of wealth, stocks, bonds, real estate, houses, and all that to pass on to the next generation. But if someone says to you, oh, so what do black people get for voting for these Democrats? Remember, in 1964, Barry Goldwater was running, and Barry Goldwater opposed the 1964 Civil Rights Act. Remember that you had the John Birch Society out there saying, hey, they're going to come into your neighborhoods, into your business. You have privacy rights. You have property rights. You don't have to have the government telling you to deal with people you don't want to deal with. Remember, that was the... So, wow, imagine if we had gone the other way. Oh, no, I think it would have been trouble. Now, I'm someone who wrote a book about 10 years ago in which I said you have some dysfunction in terms of the black community, especially black leadership, that does not call out the drug dealers, doesn't call out bad schools, doesn't say to young people who are trying to find their way, hey, listen, you got to stay in school, you got to build a resume, you shouldn't be having children before you're married, and you shouldn't get married before you finish an education. I mean, these are steps that will almost guarantee that you're not in poverty, and I think, black community needs to be more aggressive in saying that to young people. We shouldn't have the kind of shootings that we see in Chicago. But that's not to lose sight of the larger historical picture, which is this tremendous road of progress that has been, it makes me emotional because it's just, people who were being discriminated against, people who are liable in terms of the stereotypes that Donald Trump employs to this day, nonetheless believe in the American dream. I mean, this are my parents. And my parents are like people working really hard. My dad was a boxing trainer. My mom started as a garment worker not far from here in Manhattan. And, they raise kids and they say, kids, go to school. And you know what? My sister's a lawyer, my brother's a lawyer, and I'm a journalist. It's an amazing story.
Sure. It's an amazing American story. And in your book, you started out with showing the parallel between his father, the Trump's family, and your family and what you went through. And in my case, while my family is more recent to this country, it's similar. Neither of my parents had a college education, and my dad didn't even finish high school, frankly. And they were able to come to America, have opportunity. My mom born here, but my father not. And then I go on to be a lawyer. My sister goes on to be a psychologist.
Right.
I have a radio show on Sirius XM.
Yeah.
So things, this generation, the sacrifice of my family helped. They didn't have to deal with institutional racism that was actually done by law, which African Americans. But the last thing, and I get historical, and I'm not trying to push back on you. I'm telling you.
No. I appreciate the question because
I hear from African American
listeners
who call up and say,
yeah.
Well, I want elected officials who we support to be here more than just election day. I want them to be a part of our community and help our community. And I know there's no simple answer whatsoever. I'm sincerely intellectually curious as to what we should be asking Democrats. I tell African American listeners, you have an ask. You're entitled to an ask. You've given so much to this party. And if you're not happy with it, you should be asking for more. And if it's more elected officials, we've only had 2 black governors elected, 4 in our history, 2 elected. We might change it now with Andrew Gillum, who's great, and Stacey Abrams and Ben Jealous. But still, we have a long way to go. And I'm not putting you on the spot, but I'm just curious from your point of view, is there something more Democrats could be doing, even if it's not saying delivering a policy, doing more to make the African American community know that they're appreciated for all the support they've given through these decades?
Well, I don't think it's about, platitudes. I think there are real steps that need to be taken. So, for example, a moment ago, I was saying to you that I wrote a book, and I said in the book, why is it that the black politicians aren't hell on wheels with regard to the quality of public education in this country? Because guess who, there's no say, oh yeah, some of the black kids go to this type of school, that type of school. Look, overwhelmingly 90+% of American kids go to public schools. And I would say close to 100% of the black kids go to public schools. And when you look at the levels of residential segregation in the country, and then correspondingly the quality of the schools in the poor black and Latino neighborhoods, you'd say, this is an outrage. This has got to stop. You are disadvantaging, you are killing off young people before they get a chance to start climbing that ladder of upward mobility. So to me, I would be saying, black politicians, you got to have a fight, and you got to fight for the quality of these schools. And it may mean that you're going to have to fight with the unions, who often are putting money in your pockets, but you got to fight because it's not just about the jobs, which are key. I said to you earlier, the growth of that black middle class, a lot of those people are teachers, principals, administrators. I understand. But you can't put them above the kids. I think that you essentially are killing off your young. And then you say, oh, look at the growth of the jails, look at the problems. You know what you got to say if the schools are the primary instrument of elevating those young people, make sure the schools work. So that's one substantive policy demand that I would say to your black listeners. That's one thing we should be calling
and I also
about.
love the fact that it wasn't around criminal justice reform, that it was about something about education and about helping, because too many white politicians, it's about criminal justice reform when they speak about African Americans. And it reminds me when, you know, you have people who are well-intentioned things about, we have to counter violent extremism within the Muslim community. I'm like, we're a teeny bit of us are doing extremist stuff. Look at the white supremacists.
Yeah.
Why don't you do it with them?
Wow.
So, right, when you have it. But
you know, by the way, on that one, I love it when they say, hey, it's you guys that practice identity politics. And I think, what? Trump, white identity politics is his calling card.
Everything is white identity politics. Juan, it was great meeting Juan Williams. His new book, folks. What the hell do you have to lose? Trump's war on civil rights. It's a great book. It mimics the Civil Rights Act. You're a great writer, and I appreciate you coming in. And he also signed the book, so I'm keeping it, folks. eBay. I'll sell it. No, not selling. Juan, it was great, and you're welcome back. Anytime you're right across the street, sincerely, you want to come over and just shrug off the insanity of that
Wait a minute,
panel.
this is too much. I'm going to tell you something. I love it, Dean, because progressive radio. I mean, you don't understand where I work.
Over there. You're part of the resistance. You are. All right, Juan, thanks very much. Folks, we'll take our break. Come back with more of the Dean Obeidallah Show after this. November 6, 2018 isn't just election day. It is judgment day for progressives and our vision of this country.
Don't go anywhere. This is the Dean Obeidallah Show on Sirius XM Progress 127.